I'm going to interrupt the schedule of the month of daily videos that have been scheduled up to this point to release at 3 p.m. Central Time every single day to give you an urgent message, and that is, trans women are fucking cool. Like, I don't think there is a group of people online or in real life who is quite as cool as trans women. And I say this as someone who's not trans myself, but have admired this group of people so much and have had so many friends who are transgender. In fact, for like over 5 years now, they've made up the majority of my friends. You know, since I was in my early teens, they made up the majority of my friends. I've come to admire these folks a lot. I admired them so much that there was a point when I actually wanted to be one of them, and for a moment, not very long, thought that I might have been one of them. Of course, personal experience with hormones and presenting that way, realizing that I did not like to present that way, ended up changing my mind, but I was so enthusiastically supportive of this group that I actually took on the mantle of attempting to become one of them. Almost like Kurt Cobain back in like the 80s, being so supportive of the gays for being outsiders and on the edges of society that he chose to be, quote-unquote, chose to become gay as a form of protest. I relate to that a lot. But why do I think trans women are so cool, aside from the fact that my friend groups have been predominantly made up of them, and also many of my relationships have been predominantly made up of them? No, it's not just because they're hot and nice to me. I think there's a particular confluence of traits and interests that many of these folks have, especially on the internet, that align with me very strongly and often go several degrees further than I do. Like, again and again and again, I meet trans women who are extremely passionate about their interests, and their interests tend to be rather esoteric in nature. They tend to be pretty different from what most people would be interested in the first place, or they take something that a lot of people do like and then fixate on really minute details pertaining to it, things that most people wouldn't look close enough to become passionate about, especially not to that degree. And also, I think there's a lot of political extremism, not in a negative sense. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but rather extreme politics. Politics that are, you know, to the far end of the paradigm in either direction, but they tend to be explored by these people in profoundly intellectual ways. Like, typically when I talk about extremism on this channel, it's in a very negative light because I am very opposed to violence. I'm very opposed to civil disorder and people attempting to hurt others in the society and demonize outgroups and so on. But the sort of extremist politics that I tend to see represented by these people are like radical individualism away from the society, you know, doing one's own thing and to be left to one's own devices, or radically socialistic, anarchist politics that they can cite a fuck ton of literature about to back up their points. In general, trans women tend to be like the smartest people that I ever meet or talk to. It's kind of astounding that there's just this group of people that have this like huge confluence of traits which are almost all like intellectual and passionate in nature. It, in my experience, makes them deeply engaging to speak to because they can rattle off so much knowledge about this stuff, and even when they don't have like the hard database, they usually have a lot of interesting observations on the things that they're interested in, and I always find that so endearing and special, making these people some very likely friends of mine. I also tend to find the aesthetic interests that I have and that these people have to be generally pretty similar. Like, when I'm going out with my girlfriend, who happens to be transgender, to the store to exclusively get Monster because both of us drink Monster, and then to come home and watch some obscure anime on my ThinkPad, and she'll comment on how cool it is that I have a Libre booted X60. I can't help but feel as though there's something really, really special about this person and this dynamic. And I don't think I would have a dynamic like that, or at least anywhere near as likely have a dynamic like that in that situation with a cis woman or with a guy. I can't help but feel as though it's something really particular to transgender women. And also, you know, if I were to talk about my relationship more in depth, most of what I would say is stuff that only really pertains to her as a person, like away from all other groups, separate from all of that. But this stands to illustrate the broader point that I'm making, because she's a highly specific person that I can't exactly pin to any particular group or movement, but that's the point, is that trans women tend to be very individual people. Like, there are all of these unique eccentricities that I can point to as like a broad general thing, but when you actually interact with the people, these eccentricities present in such massively different ways, and there's all of these other traits that tend to extend from those things that are even more specific, individual to them. That's the point I'm making. It's not that there's like this group of things that make all of these people exactly the same. No, it's the fact that these people tend to be very different in their own ways, and that tends to make them so much more engaging to talk to. And in particular, the fact that many of these people tend to share interests with me and are very passionate about them. They tend to share interests in certain aesthetics and ideologies as me, and tend to be very passionate about those things. It's like, I talk to them and then I get along with them like gangbusters. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I have this one friend who's really into the dead language Gothic. Like, she's constantly talking about it and making all of these esoteric anime memes with references to the Gothic language in them, and I get this sense from her that she's so passionate about this dead language that she like literally wants to bring back the Goths. Like, such a massive grand vision coming from this person for this highly specific dead language that most people don't even know about. And yet when I hear her talk about it, there's so much passion, it's like it'll make your head spin. And seeing all of this, you know, you go on trans Twitter and it's either rants from folks like that or like esoteric jokes with the kind of not pre-internet, early internet aesthetics, early 2000s anime aesthetics and anarchist aesthetics that I like. You know, they're posting themselves like drinking Monster with their ThinkPad. I feel like it's just a barrage of stuff that I either like or I'm adjacent to or I can have a conversation about. And it's like trans femmes seem to communicate about these things either in a way that's similar to me or a way that resonates with me. Even when it's about stuff that I don't have interest in, like I'm not interested in Gothic, I love hearing my friend there talk about Gothic. And I feel like there's something there. Like, it isn't so much that there's like a template for trans women because everybody is an individual. It's more like this group is so opposed, like as a category, the category is just so opposed to being generalized. It's impossible to generalize them the way that it is for normies or some other group of people who we can pin down pretty easily on what they're like. I don't think that's true of trans women. Like, the thing that I'm basically explaining here, the through line that I'm pinning down here, is that these people are so unique and individual that they have all of these eccentricities about them. But that's the only through line. Whereas with other people, I'd be able to make less broad statements and a lot more of them, and it would just be so boring because it would sound like everybody's the same. But these people, I see a lot of heart and passion and and intrigue in them from all over the map. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's in large part why I tend to get along with these people so well, and why I found myself connecting with them on a pretty deep level. Also, it's just admirable, like, seeing these people do what they do, especially in this society that is incredibly hostile to what they're doing. It's admirable that they would take it upon themselves to, in efforts to actualize and live out their lives as themselves, to put themselves in that much danger. I think that's incredibly admirable, and that alone makes this group of people interesting and cool in and of itself. But when you tack on all this other stuff that I notice from being involved in the community, speaking to people in the community, it's like something truly, truly special.